The email arrived at 3:17 a.m. I know because the insidious blue light of my laptop screen was the only illumination in my cramped room, and the numbers on the bottom right seemed to mock me with their precision. Northwood University scholarship update. My breath hitched. Not again. Please, not again. My cursor, a trembling white arrow, hovered over the subject line. It wasn't shock this time, not the raw, incredulous agony of the first time, or the desperate, clinging hope of the second. This was a cold, familiar dread, settling in like an old coat, one I'd hoped I'd finally outgrown and thrown away. My finger twitched, clicked. The sterile, impersonal language swam before my eyes. Regret to inform you, unprecedented number of applicants, difficult decisions, budgetary constraints. The usual symphony of bullshit, orchestrated to crush dreams with maximum efficiency and minimum culpability. The scholarship, my meticulously earned, desperately needed scholarship to Northwood University, was revoked. Again, my stomach didn't just knot, it felt like it was trying to digest itself. Years of work, of scrimping, of existing on instant ramen and sheer willpower, all for this. All for them to snatch it away with a few careless keystrokes. Then, something else. A flicker, not a memory, not exactly. More like an echo in an empty room. A blinding flash of light, not from the screen, but behind my eyes. Numbers. Complex algorithms, stock market tickers, lines of elegant, potent code, scrolling past with a speed that should have been incomprehensible yet felt familiar. Then, gone. Just as quickly, the phantom images receded, leaving me blinking at the damning email, the cursor blinking back, steady and indifferent. I pushed the weirdness down. This wasn't the time for a breakdown. This was time for well, I didn't know what it was time for anymore. My apartment, if you could call it that, was a shoebox stacked on other shoeboxes, smelling perpetually of my downstairs neighbor's questionable cooking and my own simmering resentment. The peeling wallpaper, a sickly yellow, seemed to weep in sympathy. Northwood, with its ivy-covered promises, was a world away from this. A world they kept dangling just out of reach. I picked up my phone, the cheap plastic cool against my clammy palm. My finger, still trembling slightly, dialed the familiar number for the Northwood admissions office. It rang 5 times before a crisp, professional voice answered. Northwood University admissions. How may I help you? I took a breath, kept my voice even. This is Anya Sharma. I'm calling about my scholarship. There seems to be an issue. The practiced platitudes began. Miss Henderson, or whatever her name was today, was so sorry to hear that. She understood my disappointment. She offered to look into it. The hold music was a Vivaldi piece, probably chosen to inspire lofty thoughts, or perhaps to mock the financially challenged with its effortless elegance. She came back on the line, her voice still perfectly modulated, perfectly unhelpful. Yes, Miss Sharma, as the email stated, due to unforeseen budgetary reallocations and an exceptionally competitive pool this year. Budgetary constraints, Miss Sharma. The same tired line they'd used before. My future. A line item they could just delete. My voice, however, was dangerously calm. Miss Henderson, this is the 3rd time Northwood has offered me a full scholarship and then rescinded it, citing vague reasons. Could you perhaps offer a more specific explanation? A slight pause, a digital rustle of papers. I'm afraid the information I have is what was communicated in the email, Miss Sharma. These decisions are made at a higher level. Higher level, always a higher level, faceless, unaccountable. I see, I said, my voice still quiet. Thank you for your time. I ended the call before the carefully constructed dam of my composure could crack. The flashes came again, stronger this time. The intricate web of numbers, the sudden intuitive understanding of financial leverage, of systemic weaknesses. It wasn't just an echo. It felt like knowledge, hardwired into my brain. Knowledge I shouldn't possess. Knowledge that whispered of possibilities far beyond begging for scraps from Northwood's table. Despair was a luxury I couldn't afford, not anymore. This time, something different sparked in its place. A cold, hard resolve. The audacious thought, once a fleeting whisper, now solidified. This time, they wouldn't just hear from me. they'd answer to me. The scene shifts, the lighting in my mind dims to the sepia tones of memory. I'm speaking from the now, but looking back, the words tinged with the bitter knowledge of how that first story ended. We weren't poor in the dramatic, hand-wringing way you see in old movies. We were the quiet kind of poor, the kind where the bills always loomed larger than the paychecks, where new clothes came from thrift stores and dinner was often potatoes, three ways, but always somehow with a side of hope, mostly served up by Gran. Gran. She was the one who first saw the spark in me. While Mom worked double shifts as a cleaner, her hands raw and her smile weary, Gran would sit with me at our small, wobbly kitchen table, the smell of old textbooks that were my only escape mingling with the scent of her cardamom tea. She'd listen to me dream, her eyes, the color of warm honey, crinkling at the corners. "You've got a fire in you, Anya Betty," she'd say, her voice a soft rumble. "Don't let anyone put it out." Northwood University. I first heard the name when I was 12, reading a tattered library book about famous scientists. An alumnus, a Nobel laureate, had gone there. The pictures showed Gothic buildings, sprawling green lawns, students who looked like they held the world in their confident hands. It became my Oz, my personal Everest, a symbol of everything I wasn't but desperately wanted to be. Escape, knowledge, a future where I wasn't defined by the shabbiness of my zip code. My intelligence was a given, a hungry thing that devoured books and concepts with equal ferocity. But intelligence alone doesn't pay tuition fees. So, I worked, relentlessly. Every spare hour, every ounce of energy poured into grades, into extracurriculars that might look good on an application, into a single, towering dream. Gran believed, Mom hoped, though fear often clouded her eyes. The strain of our finances, of my consuming ambition, was a quiet undercurrent in our small household. The memory is so vivid, it almost tastes sweet even now. The acceptance letter, the first one, arrived on a Tuesday. Thick, creamy envelope. Northwood's crest embossed in gold. I remember my hands shaking so badly I could barely tear it open. Full scholarship. Full! It wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a key, a lifeline. The joy in our tiny apartment that day could have lit up the whole city. Gran cried, actual tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks, muttering prayers of gratitude. Mom hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack, a rare, unburdened smile transforming her face. For a few weeks, the world was bright. Sacrifices, mine, Mom's, Gran's, they had all been worth it. Then came the email, almost identical to the one I'd just received in this new life. Regret to inform you. Exceptional circumstances. Reevaluation of financial aid packages. I was naive then. I called bewildered. I begged. I sent letters, testimonials. The excuses were vague, impenetrable. A Dean Thornton, whose name was on the bottom of the letter, became the faceless embodiment of institutional betrayal. He never responded directly. The impact was devastating. It wasn't just the loss of the scholarship, it was the shattering of a fundamental belief that hard work and merit would be rewarded. The world, which had briefly seemed full of promise, snapped back to its default setting, indifferent and often cruel. My voice in these recollections is flatter, the confessional tone edged with the weariness of battles fought and lost. Life after that first cancellation was a blur of soul-crushing jobs. Stocking shelves until my back ached, serving lukewarm coffee to impatient customers, the smell of grease and defeat clinging to me like cheap perfume. Northwood became a bitter taste in my mouth. But the dream, stubborn and resilient, refused to die completely. It just went underground, biding its time. Night classes at the community college. Textbooks bought with hoarded tips. Sleep became a rationed commodity. Days bled into nights. Coffee and ramen. Rinse, repeat. The fire Gran spoke of dwindled to an ember, but it still glowed faintly in the dark. Years passed, 2 to be exact. I was older, harder, the soft edges of youthful optimism chipped away. But when Northwood's application window opened again, something compelled me to try. Maybe it was defiance. Maybe I was just a glutton for punishment. The reapplication process was grueling, reopening old wounds. Then, the impossible. Another thick, creamy envelope. Another scholarship. Disbelief warred with a cynical, cautious hope. Had they made a mistake? Would they snatch it away again? This time, the joy was tempered with a heavy dose of skepticism. I told myself it was real, but a part of me was already bracing for the fall. This is where the memories get fragmented, the edges blur. Present tense intrudes as the immediacy of that final trauma resurfaces. Leading up to the second cancellation in that first life, the one that preceded whatever this rebirth is, a sense of foreboding hung heavy. I was different then, in my last few weeks. Bolder. I'd started asking uncomfortable questions, digging into the university's finances for a research paper, noticing discrepancies in their much-touted diversity initiatives. I think I was close to something, some minor scandal perhaps, something that would have embarrassed them. Maybe I was targeted. Maybe it was just bad luck. The email arrived, the second gut punch. But before I could even process that familiar betrayal, before I could even begin to fight, it happened. It's not a clear memory, more like a nightmare collage. I was walking home late from the library, the cancellation notice a lead weight in my backpack. Rain, slicking the streets. Headlights, too bright, coming too fast. A screech of tires, a sound that still makes the hair on my arms stand up. Blinding pain, a horrifying, crushing weight. Then, silence. A profound, absolute silence. And a feeling of falling, not down, but through. Through everything, light, information. An eternity compressed into a nanosecond. And then, nothing. Until I woke up screaming. I shift in my chair, the cheap plastic groaning under me. The memory of that awakening is still visceral, too close. My narrative slips fully into the past tense for this, a story I'm still trying to tell myself, to understand. I woke up screaming, but no sound came out. My throat was raw, my lungs burning, but the silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. My hands flew to my face. They were mine, the familiar shape, the scar on my left thumb from a childhood accident. But they felt younger, smoother. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed its way up my throat. I scrambled out of bed, my legs tangled in the thin blanket, and stumbled towards the small, cracked mirror above my dresser. The face staring back was mine. Anya Sharma. But it was the face from 3 years ago. Younger, less lined by worry, the shadows under the eyes not quite so permanent. The calendar on the wall, the one Mom had picked up from the dollar store with pictures of kittens, read August 2020. 3 years. I had somehow traveled back 3 years. The world tilted. I gripped the dresser, my knuckles white. It wasn't a dream. The details were too sharp, too real. The lingering scent of stale coffee, the precise pattern of cracks on the ceiling, the insistent drip of the faucet in the tiny bathroom, all achingly, terrifyingly familiar from that specific period in my past. Then came the flood. It wasn't a gentle stream of returning memories from my first life. It was a tidal wave, a tsunami of pure, unadulterated information. Financial data, global market trends, complex coding languages, quantum physics theories, the intimate biographies of people I'd never met, the rise and fall of corporations yet to be founded. It poured into my mind, a torrent of raw knowledge, impossibly vast, impossibly detailed. It felt like my skull would crack open from the pressure. I collapsed onto the floor, gasping, clutching my head. This wasn't just remembering my past life. This was something else. Something alien. Had I died? Was this some bizarre afterlife? Or had I, in that final violent moment of my first life, somehow downloaded the future? Or something far stranger? The how was a terrifying black box, but the what was screaming in my brain. I knew things. Impossible things. My first coherent thought, once the initial deluge slowed to a manageable, though still overwhelming torrent, wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about Northwood. It was a desperate, primal need to make sense of it, to survive it, and then a flicker of the old, stubborn Anya to secure my future. To make sure, with this impossible, terrifying new arsenal of knowledge, That the scholarship, the one that was still in this timeline, a few months away from being offered and then cruelly revoked again, would stick. This time, things would be different. They had to be. The shift to present tense now feels natural, as this is my current reality, the life I'm actively shaping with this strange new power. The first few weeks after the awakening, as I started to call it in my head, are a blur of cautious experimentation. I feel like an imposter in my own younger skin, the weight of unearned knowledge a constant pressure behind my eyes. The world looks the same, but I see it through an entirely new lens, a complex matrix of opportunities, risks, and predictable human behaviors. I start small. The stock market knowledge is the most immediately accessible, the most quantifiable. I scraped together the few $100s I had saved in this timeline money that, in my first life, went towards application fees and emergency ramen. My fingers, now guided by an intuition that feels both alien and intimately my own, dance across the keyboard of my ancient laptop. I buy a little-known tech stock just before it announces a breakthrough. I short another just before a scandal hits. It's like having the answers to a test no one else has even seen yet. The client payment for a freelance coding gig, a complex website build that in my first life would have taken me weeks of painstaking effort, hits my account. I'd completed it in 2 days, the lines of code flowing from me with an effortless elegance I don't understand but can't deny. It's more money than I'd seen in months back then. It's real. This power, whatever its origin, is real. I use some of it to pay off Mom's overdue electricity bill. She just stares at the cash, then at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of relief and suspicion. Anya, where did you— Freelance work, Mom, I say, trying for a casual smile. Good client. She doesn't quite believe me, but the relief wins out. When I tell Gran, very casually, to sell those few ancient forgotten shares her own father had left her, shares in a company I now know is teetering on the brink of a buyout, she just laughs. Oh, Anya Betty, what do you know of such things? Until the check arrived, triple what she'd ever dreamed they were worth. Then she just looked at me, a strange, knowing light in her honey-colored eyes, and patted my hand. You always were a clever girl. The initial fear, the sheer ontological shock of my situation begins to recede, replaced by a growing sense of confidence. Not arrogance, but a quiet certainty. I have tools now, powerful ones. The loneliness of my secret is immense, a constant companion. There's no one I can tell, no one who would understand. But the thrill of this burgeoning control, after a lifetime of being powerless, is a potent antidote. And then it happens, right on schedule. Or rather, right on the old schedule. The email from Northwood University lands in my inbox. Scholarship update. I open it. My heart rate doesn't even quicken. I read the familiar weaselly words. Regret to inform you, budgetary constraints. The anger is still there, a cold, hard ember glowing in my chest. But it's different now. It's not the desperate, helpless rage of before. It's analytical, focused. The faces of Dean Thornton, of the nameless, faceless administrators who rubber-stamped these dismissals of human potential, flash in my mind. The email is the same, the excuses the same. But I am not. This time, the dread is gone, replaced by a blueprint, a detailed, multi-layered, ruthlessly efficient blueprint that has been assembling itself in the back of my mind, piece by piece, ever since the awakening. It's no longer just about my scholarship, that's a skirmish. I'm thinking about the war, the sheer, breathtaking arrogance of these institutions, playing God with futures, doling out opportunities like feudal lords bestowing favors, all while hoarding endowments and preaching meritocracy. A new goal clicks into place, sharp and clear. It's audacious, it's terrifying, and it feels utterly, undeniably right. They want to play God with futures? Fine. I'll become the bank. I won't just get my scholarship back. I'll dismantle their system from the inside. I'll gain so much power they can't touch me or anyone like me ever again. Northwood University made a line item of my future. I'll make them a footnote in mine. The blueprint in my head isn't just about defense anymore. It's about conquest. Subtle, silent, financial conquest. My first moves are swift, almost invisible to the untrained eye. The knowledge I possess, this strange precognitive understanding of market ebbs and flows, is a weapon of unimaginable power. I don't just predict trends, I feel them, like a change in barometric pressure before a storm. Buy low, sell high, it sounds so deceptively simple. But when you know when low is bedrock and when high is the stratosphere about to be breached, it's a different game entirely. I leverage my initial modest capital. Cryptocurrency, a volatile beast to others, is a predictable algorithm to me. I ride its waves, multiplying my stake with each cycle. Then, tech startups. I know which ones will soar, which will flame out. I invest accordingly, a ghost in the machine, my digital fingerprints untraceable through layers of encrypted accounts and temporary IP addresses. It's not just about accumulating wealth, though the numbers in my secure accounts climb at a dizzying rate. It's about building infrastructure. Shell corporations, registered in obscure jurisdictions, spring into existence with a few keystrokes. A network of unwitting, or perhaps willfully ignorant for the right price, intermediaries, low-level financial consultants, hungry young lawyers execute my commands, never knowing the true architect of the strategies they implement. I am a whisper in the digital wind, a phantom pulling strings from the shadows of my tiny apartment. There's a stark, exhilarating terror to it all. Every successful trade, every new asset folded into my rapidly expanding portfolio feels like a victory. And a step further away from the girl who just wanted to study, the girl who wept over a revoked scholarship. That girl is still in here somewhere, watching with wide, slightly horrified eyes. But another Anya is taking the lead now, an Anya forged in the crucible of betrayal and armed with impossible knowledge. The loneliness is a constant ache, a dull throb beneath the thrill of this clandestine power. I eat alone, surrounded by screens displaying a river of data only I can truly navigate. Sometimes I catch my reflection in a dark monitor, pale, intense, the ghost of a smile playing on my lips. It's the smile of someone playing a very high-stakes game and, against all odds, winning. With capital comes capability. My next target, Northwood University itself. Not its gates, not yet. Its digital underbelly. My coding skills, now amplified to an almost supernatural degree, become my skeleton key. I'm not a hacker in the traditional sense. I don't brute force my way in. I find the flaws in their systems, the overlooked backdoors, the lazy security protocols. It's like walking through a house where all the windows have been left slightly ajar. Night after night, fueled by cheap coffee and an increasingly expensive brand of righteous fury, I delve into their servers. Financial records, board meeting minutes, internal memos, donor lists, endowment portfolios. It's all there, a sprawling, tangled mess of ambition, hypocrisy, and carefully managed public relations. I discover the hidden endowments, the questionable investments in industries that would make their PR department weep. I map out the real power players, not just the public-facing Dean Thorntons, but the influential alumni, the corporate sponsors, the old money families who treat the university as their private fiefdom. The information I gather is meticulously cataloged, cross-referenced, stored in encrypted drives that exist only as fragmented data across multiple cloud servers accessible only by me. I learn their pressure points, their vanities, their secrets. It's like dissecting an enormous, complex organism, laying bare its vulnerabilities. During one late-night trawl, a name catches my eye. Professor Alastair Finch, former head of the ethics department, recently and very quietly retired. His digital footprint shows a history of challenging the administration on financial transparency and donor influence. He was silenced, pushed out. A potential ally? Or just another casualty? I file his name away. The thought of an ally is tempting, but my paranoia, a newly acquired but fast-growing instinct, keeps me isolated. For now, I am a ghost, and ghosts work alone. The deeper I dig, the clearer the picture becomes. Northwood isn't just an institution of learning, it's a business, a brand, a complex ecosystem of power and influence. And like any business, it can be pressured, manipulated, and, if necessary, broken. My first overt move against Northwood is not an attack, but a gift. A Trojan horse, perhaps, but one filled with genuine, untraceable cash. Through one of my newly established, impeccably anonymous charitable foundations, I make a significant donation to Northwood's chronically underfunded Classics department. It's a department I know from my research is filled with passionate, brilliant academics constantly fighting for scraps, often overshadowed by the flashier, more lucrative STEM programs that attract big corporate donors. The sum is large enough to be noticed, to cause a stir, but not so large as to trigger immediate high-level panic. It's a calculated probe designed to test the waters, to observe the administration's reaction, to see how they handle an unexpected windfall that doesn't come with the usual strings attached from a wealthy alumnus, demanding a building named after them. The reaction is illuminating. Confusion first, then a flurry of internal emails, which I, of course, have access to, trying to identify the mysterious benefactor. Dean Thornton, ever the opportunist, quickly tries to take credit, vaguely alluding to his tireless fundraising efforts. There are squabbles over how the money should be allocated, exposing internal fault lines and petty jealousies. Some want to absorb it into the general fund. Others see it as a chance to finally buy those rare manuscripts the Classics department has coveted for years. I watch it all unfold from my shadowy perch, a faint smile on my lips. Let them wonder. Let them fight over it. I am just planting seeds, watering them with untraceable currency. The university, so accustomed to controlling the narrative of its own generosity, is flustered by an act of philanthropy it cannot claim or direct. It's a small thing, a tiny crack in their monolithic facade, but it's a start. And it confirms what I already suspected. They are predictable, and the predictable can be controlled. The game is truly afoot now. The anonymous gift was phase 1, observation. Phase 2 is active pressure. Northwood University, like most large private institutions, doesn't exist in a vacuum. It relies on a complex ecosystem of wealthy donors, corporate partnerships, and board members with deep ties to various industries. These are its arteries, its pressure points, and I intend to squeeze. My rapidly accumulating capital, managed through a labyrinth of anonymous trusts and holding companies, begins to seep into the companies that form Northwood's financial bedrock. I'm not interested in hostile takeovers, not yet. I'm interested in influence. A significant minority stake here, a controlling interest in a key supplier there. I buy shares in the corporations where prominent Northwood board members sit as executives. I become a silent, unseen partner in their financial lives. It's a delicate dance, a high-wire act performed in the digital ether. Too much pressure, and they'd spook, consolidate their defenses. Too little, and I'd never gain the leverage I need. My days are a blur of market analysis, encrypted communications with my network of brokers, who know me only as Oracle, a moniker one of them jokingly bestowed, unaware of how close to the truth it is, and strategic planning that would make a chess grandmaster weep. One of my brokers, a young, ambitious man named David Chen, calls me, his voice a mixture of awe and barely concealed fear. Oracle, he says, his voice tight. This last move on Axiom Corp, it's aggressive. Their CEO, a Mr. Henderson, is also on the Northwood University board. Are you sure about this? Mr. Chen, my voice, filtered through layers of vocal modulation software, is calm, devoid of emotion. My certainty is why you are so well compensated. Execute the trade. He gulps audibly. Yes, Oracle. I lean back in my worn chair, a ghost of a smile playing on my lips. Mr. Henderson of Axiom Corp? One of Dean Thornton's staunchest allies on the board. Soon he'll have more pressing concerns than protecting Thornton's outdated notions of university governance. He'll be too busy answering to his new, very active, and very demanding anonymous shareholder. Me. The ripples start subtly. A board member at Northwood, a magnate in the shipping industry, suddenly finds a significant portion of his company's stock being bought up by an unknown entity, driving the price in unpredictable ways. Another, a prominent philanthropist, discovers her family's private equity firm is facing an unexpected challenge from a new, aggressive investor group that seems to anticipate her every move. These incidents, isolated at first, begin to form a pattern. Whispers start to circulate in the rarefied air of Northwood's endowment committee meetings and exclusive donor dinners. There's a new player in town, a financial force of unknown origin, moving with uncanny precision and seemingly limitless resources. Dean Thornton, initially dismissive, starts to look harried. The pressure isn't coming directly at the university yet, but its key supporters are feeling the heat, and their discomfort is beginning to travel up the chain of command. I listen to their recorded meetings. Their security, while better than the general servers, is still laughably inadequate against my unique skill set. This Oracle character, or whatever they're calling themselves, one portly trustee, a Mr. Albright, grumbles, his voice raspy. They're causing chaos in my sector. My partners are spooked. And Henderson at Axiom is practically having a meltdown, another chimes in. Says he's facing a proxy fight from an investor he can't even identify. Dean Thornton clears his throat. Gentlemen, ladies, while these external market fluctuations are concerning, I assure you Northwood's own financial position remains robust. We must not be distracted by phantoms. Phantoms. He has no idea how right he is. I am a phantom, yes, but I am also the storm gathering on their gilded horizon. Their carefully constructed world built on connections, inherited wealth, and mutual backscratching is about to be thoroughly disrupted. The time for whispers is over. It's time to give the phantom a voice, albeit a carefully controlled one. I can't remain entirely in the shadows if I want to steer the ship. I need them to know someone is at the helm, even if they can't see my face, and I orchestrate a situation. Mr. Albright, the trustee whose sector I've been strategically disrupting, is facing a critical shareholder vote. Through my various holdings, I now control a decisive block of shares. His company's future, and by extension his own comfortable position, hangs in the balance. A meeting is requested by his frantic legal team with the representatives of the new primary investor group. My terms are simple. The meeting will be via secure video conference, no recordings, other than my own, of course, and only Mr. Albright and the chairman of the Northwood board, a venerable old hawk named Marcus Thorne, are to be present from their side. They agree, their options limited. The video call connects. I use a heavily filtered image, a neutral androgynous avatar. My voice modulated into an unidentifiable monotone. Albright looks pale, Thorne's face a mask of stoic curiosity. Mr. Albright, Mr. Thorne, my synthesized voice begins, calm and even. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Thorne, ever the direct one, cuts in. Who are you? And what is your interest in Mr. Albright's company, and by extension, Northwood University? My identity is not relevant at this juncture, Mr. Thorne, I reply. As for my interests, let us say I am a keen proponent of efficiency, accountability, and robust long-term financial health. For Mr. Albright's company, and for institutions like Northwood University. Albright splutters. You're blackmailing me! Blackmail is such an unrefined term, Mr. Albright. I counter smoothly. I prefer to think of it as aligning incentives. I believe we have a mutual interest in Northwood's future. I simply propose a more dynamic approach to its funding and governance, one that ensures its continued excellence without, shall we say, relying on outdated models that are prone to inefficiency. I lay out in broad strokes some initial proposals: greater transparency in endowment management, a review of administrative overheads, a strategic shift in investment focus, nothing overtly radical, nothing about tuition yet. Just sensible, business-like suggestions that are hard to argue against, especially when delivered by someone who clearly holds a financial sword of Damocles over one of their key members. Thorne listens, his eyes narrowed, stroking his chin. He's no fool. He knows this is just the opening gambit. And if we were to consider these suggestions, then Mr. Albright might find his upcoming shareholder vote proceeds much more smoothly, I reply. And Northwood might find itself with a new, very committed, albeit anonymous benefactor interested in its long-term prosperity. The shock on their faces, even filtered through the video call, is palpable. The dismissed student, the scholarship case they'd forgotten, is now dictating terms, however indirectly. The irony is a bitter, satisfying tang on my tongue. I am no longer begging for a seat at their table. I am demonstrating my capacity to flip the entire table over. Naturally, there's resistance. Dean Thornton, when he gets wind of this, and I make sure he does through carefully leaked internal memos, is apoplectic. He sees his traditional authority, his carefully cultivated fiefdom, under threat from this unseen force. He rallies his remaining allies on the board, the old guard who are suspicious of any change, especially change dictated by an anonymous entity with a seemingly endless supply of cash and an unnerving understanding of their weaknesses. "This is an outrage," Thornton thunders in one recorded emergency board meeting I tap into. His voice is practically shaking with indignation. "We cannot allow Northwood's policies to be dictated by some shadowy puppet master. This oracle is trying to undermine the very foundations of this esteemed institution." Esteemed institution. The same one that casually crushed futures with boilerplate rejection letters. The negotiations are conducted through Thorne, who, despite his initial wariness, is pragmatic. He sees the writing on the wall, or rather, the numbers on the balance sheets of the companies I now influence. He becomes my reluctant intermediary. For every objection Thornton and his faction raise, I have a counter. They cite tradition, I cite fiscal responsibility. They appeal to academic freedom. I point out that financial insolvency is the greatest threat to that freedom. They try to unmask me. I tighten my digital security and remind them, through Thorne, that my cooperation is contingent on my anonymity. My arguments are backed by irrefutable financial logic, by detailed projections, and by the unspoken, ever-present threat of withdrawing the financial oxygen I've begun to pump into their interconnected corporate interests. It's a chess game played with billions of dollars and the future of an institution as the prize. And I, the girl who once couldn't afford textbooks without a scholarship, am steadily, methodically pushing their king into a corner. The strain is immense. I barely sleep, existing on caffeine and the sheer adrenaline-fueled intensity of it all. But with each successful counter, each concession wrung from their reluctant hands, my resolve hardens. The moment comes as I knew it would. Northwood, for all its hoarded wealth, has overextended itself on a series of vanity projects championed by Dean Thornton. A new, state-of-the-art sports stadium nobody asked for, an ill-advised overseas campus that's bleeding money. Simultaneously, a major, long-standing corporate donor, one whose board I've been quietly infiltrating, announces a sudden and strategic withdrawal of its annual multi-million-dollar contribution. The timing is, of course, entirely coincidental. My coincidence. A financial precipice looms. Panic flutters through the hallowed halls of Northwood's administration. They need a massive infusion of capital, and they need it now. All other avenues, the traditional wells of alumni and corporate charity, are either drying up, thanks to my subtle pressures, or cannot move quickly enough. There's only one entity capable of providing salvation on this scale, under these urgent conditions: my anonymous foundation. Marcus Thorne calls another emergency board meeting. This time, the atmosphere is not one of indignant resistance, but of grim acceptance. I attend again as my digital avatar, my synthesized voice the calmest in the virtual room. I lay out my terms for the bailout: a complete restructuring of the university's financial governance, the establishment of a new, independent oversight committee for the endowment, heavily influenced by my appointees, and, crucially, significant authority over future budgetary and tuition policies vested in a new Office of Strategic Funding, which will naturally be directed by my chosen anonymous representatives. Dean Thornton attempts a final blustering protest. This is tantamount to selling the soul of Northwood. My avatar doesn't even flicker. Dean Thornton. My voice is cool, precise. Northwood's soul, as you put it, seems to have been remarkably comfortable with a system that arbitrarily revokes scholarships and prioritizes marble facades over human potential. Perhaps a new definition of its soul is in order, one that values solvency and genuine merit. The vote is a formality. They are trapped. The ayes have it, not a single no. Thornton's face, visible in his little video window, is a mask of utter, bewildered defeat. He still doesn't understand he was outplayed before he even knew he was in a game with me. The scholarship girl, checkmate. The transfer of funds is almost anticlimactic. A series of keystrokes, authorizations whirring through secure servers. The numbers on the screen are staggering. enough to buy a small country, or in this case, one very surprised and now very beholden university. Northwood's immediate financial crisis is averted. I am now officially its largest benefactor. And through the carefully worded agreements, Thorne had little choice but to sign, its new financial overlord. My first address to the reconstituted board and senior administration is brief, delivered again through my avatar. I speak of a new era of fiscal responsibility, of synergistic growth, of optimizing Northwood's potential for global academic leadership. I use all the right corporate buzzwords, the kind they understand and respect. I talk about efficiency, about return on investment in education. I talk about everything except the one thing that's truly on my mind. No direct mention of tuition hikes for the general student body. Not yet. Let them absorb the initial shock. Let them get used to the new order. Weeks pass, my control solidifies. The new oversight committee is in place, staffed by brilliant, ruthless financial minds I've headhunted from around the globe, all loyal to the anonymous oracle who pays their exorbitant salaries. The Office of Strategic Funding is operational. Dean Thornton has been encouraged to take an extended sabbatical, from which he is unlikely to return to any position of real power. Then, the announcement drops, like a precisely calibrated bomb. Northwood University's tuition fees for all new incoming undergraduate and postgraduate students will be increased by 35%, effective the next academic year. The official statement, crafted by my team and issued by the university's now very compliant PR department, speaks of reflecting the enhanced value of a Northwood education, ensuring premier resources and faculty, and investing in a world-class student experience. The predictable outrage erupts. Student forums explode. Faculty issue concerned statements. Rival universities make sanctimonious noises. The media has a field day, an anonymous benefactor, now an anonymous tyrant. Simultaneously, almost as a footnote in the initial furor, another announcement is made: the establishment of the Sharma Future Leaders Program. This program, endowed with a sum that dwarfs anything Northwood has ever seen for scholarships, will offer full tuition, board, and living expenses to hundreds of exceptionally talented students from underprivileged backgrounds each year. The selection criteria are rigorous, focused entirely on merit and need. The process is transparent, managed by an independent board I personally oversee. And the scholarships are contractually uncancelable, ironclad. The headlines scream, confusion reigns. Outrage at the tuition hike battles with grudging admiration for the unprecedented scale and generosity of the Sharma program. In the quiet of my new, discreetly luxurious, and untraceable office far from campus, an office that is mine only in the digital realm, I signed the final charter for the Sharma Future Leaders. The irony is not lost on me. They took mine. A single lifeline. I'm giving back 100-fold, but on my terms, the terms of a queen, not a beggar. Was it petty, this tuition hike, this flexing of financial muscle? Maybe a part of it. Was it effective? Absolutely. Sometimes you have to burn down the old, rotting structures to let something new, something stronger, have a chance to grow. And the new Northwood, leaner, more focused, and acutely aware of where its funding truly comes from, will be a very different institution, my institution. The campus, and indeed the wider academic world, does not take the news quietly. My carefully constructed anonymity means Anya Sharma is not the public target. Instead, it's the shadowy new benefactor, the faceless corporate influence, that becomes the villain in countless op-eds and angry student blog posts. Northwood's hallowed green quads, usually serene, now host noisy protests. Chants of education, not exploitation. And who owns Northwood? Echo off the Gothic architecture. I watch it all, a detached observer, scrolling through the heated online debates, the grainy footage of student rallies. It's a strange sensation to be the unseen cause of so much visible turmoil. The media paints a picture of a venerable institution hijacked by a ruthless, profit-driven entity. They don't see the rot I'm trying to excise. They don't see the Sharma Future Leaders Program as anything more than a cynical PR move to offset the brutal tuition hike. Some faculty members resign in protest. Others, more pragmatic, or perhaps more appreciative, of the sudden influx of research funding to previously neglected departments. Another of my quiet initiatives, publicly defend the bold new vision. The university is a microcosm of society itself, fractured, argumentative, struggling to reconcile ideals with harsh economic realities I've deliberately imposed. One evening, my encrypted communicator buzzes. It's Maria Rodriguez, my best friend from my first life, or at least the version of her from this current timeline. We'd reconnected cautiously after my awakening. She'd won a partial scholarship to Northwood's journalism school, a dream she'd almost given up on. Now her voice is tight with an anger I recognize all too well. The anger of the disadvantaged facing yet another barrier. "Anya, this is insane," she says, not even a hello. "This tuition hike. People are devastated. Good students, smart students, they're going to have to drop out. How can Northwood do this? And this mysterious benefactor? It's like they're trying to turn it into some elite club for billionaires' kids." My heart aches. This is the cost, the collateral damage. "Maria," I begin, choosing my words carefully, my voice still filtered, still anonymous even to her in this context of my oracle persona that I've indirectly let her know is a contact of mine. Sometimes, for a system to be truly reformed, it has to be shaken to its core. The new scholarship program? It's designed to catch those who would fall through the cracks. "A few hundred scholarships don't make up for pricing out thousands," she retorts, her voice thick with emotion. "You sound like one of them. The people who run this place who don't care about actual students." "No, Maria," I say, my own voice softer than I intend, the filter barely masking the weariness. "I'm the one who makes the rules they now have to follow. It's a different perspective." Her silence on the other end of the line is more damning than any argument. The chasm between the Anya she knew and the force I've become feels impossibly wide. Dean Thornton, stripped of his power and languishing on his forced sabbatical, attempts one final pathetic gambit. He requests a meeting not with my avatar, but with the official and entirely figurehead director of my primary foundation. I grant it, curious. I watch, of course, through the director's discreet lapel camera. Thornton looks diminished, his usual bluster replaced by a desperate, wheedling tone. He appeals to the Foundation's moral responsibility, its duty to Northwood's legacy. He speaks of tradition, of the soul of the university he claims I'm destroying. He even hints vaguely at uncovering the truth behind this hostile takeover, a threat as empty as his former pronouncements of authority. My appointed director, a sharp, impassive woman I'll call Miss Evans, listens patiently, her expression unreadable. When Thornton finally winds down, his arguments exhausted, Miss Evans leans forward slightly. "Dean Thornton," she says, her voice cool and precise, "your definition of Northwood's soul seems to involve a remarkable tolerance for inefficiency, cronyism, and a system that actively disadvantages students based on their financial standing. A system that, I might add, saw fit to rescind Miss Anya Sharma's scholarship on multiple occasions under your tenure. A curious definition of soul. Wouldn't you agree?" The blood drains from Thornton's face at the mention of my name. The name of the insignificant student he'd dismissed years ago, now clearly linked in his mind to this cataclysm. He stammers, speechless. Miss Evans continues, relentless. "The new Northwood Dean will be built on transparency, merit, and fiscal strength. Your legacy, I'm afraid, will be a footnote, a cautionary tale. Thank you for your time." He doesn't bluster. He doesn't threaten. He just seems to deflate. The fight is gone. It's a quiet, almost pitiful end to his reign. His power was always an illusion, derived from the institution. I derived mine from understanding its weaknesses and exploiting them. There's a grim satisfaction in it, but no joy. He was a symptom, not the disease. The disease was the system itself. And I am its new and hopefully more effective physician. Months later, the first cohort of the Sharma future leaders arrives on campus. The furor over the tuition hike has subsided into a grudging, uneasy acceptance, particularly as the tangible benefits of the new funding, upgraded labs, smaller class sizes in certain departments, more research grants, begin to materialize. I arranged to be present, not as myself, Anya Sharma, the once rejected student, but as an anonymous observer during their orientation week. I watched them from a distance. A young woman from a remote village in Appalachia, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and determination. A brilliant young coder from a crowded inner city project, already debating complex algorithms with a Nobel laureate professor I'd helped recruit. A budding artist whose portfolio nearly made me weep with its raw talent, who would never have afforded even the application fee without the program. They are bright, they are hungry, they are bursting with the kind underscore of potential Northwood used to so casually discard. In their eyes, as they look around the historic campus that is now truly open to them, I see the girl I used to be. The one who just needed a chance, a single unbroken promise. A young man, his scholarship acceptance letter clutched in his hand like a sacred text, turns to a fellow scholar. "Can you believe we're actually here?" he says, his voice filled with a joy so pure, it makes my chest ache. Someone actually believed in us. Someone did. It wasn't the institution. It was me. And for this moment, seeing this tangible result of my ruthless, complicated campaign, the weight of my decisions, the loneliness of my power feels a little lighter. This part, at least, is unequivocally right. This part makes sense. I stand at a window in a discreet building I now own just off campus, a building that houses the quiet, unacknowledged nerve center of my Northwood operations. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the green, bathing the Gothic towers in a warm, golden light. It looks beautiful, peaceful, deceptively so. The knowledge from my rebirth, the how and why of it, remains a mystery, a constant hum beneath the surface of my thoughts. Is it a gift? A curse? A cosmic error? I still don't know. I carry it with me, this impossible burden, this incredible power. I've used it to right a personal wrong, yes, but also to reshape an institution, to force it, however unwillingly, towards a version of meritocracy it only ever paid lip service to. Have I changed? Irrevocably. The girl who dreamed of simply attending Northwood is a ghost, a memory. In her place is a woman who owns it, in all but name. A woman who understands power, not as an abstract concept, but as a tool, a weapon, a responsibility. The path I've walked has been morally gray, littered with compromises and collateral damage. Maria's disappointed voice still echoes in my ears sometimes. But then I think of the Sharma scholars, their faces bright with a future that just a year ago would have been impossible for them. And I know this is not an ending. It's a beginning. They canceled my scholarship, trying to break me. They didn't realize they were just teaching me how to buy the whole damn system. And Anya Sharma, the girl they tried to erase, was just getting started. The world is full of unjust systems, of closed doors and gatekeepers. Northwood was merely the first. My blueprint has many more pages yet to be written.